Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Now, today I'm joined by somebody that has been a huge inspiration on Sledgehammer Horror for a very long time. Justin from the amazing Epic Film Guys. Justin, how you doing, man?
I'm great, man. Ken, really appreciate you having me on this evening to talk horror. It is one of my favorite things in the entire world, so it's a pleasure to be here, man.
Oh man, and like I said, to have you here is such an epic experience for me. But before we talk about why you're here, Justin, I would like for the people that don't know you to get to know you a little bit. You started the movie podcast your mother warned you about, Epic Film Guys, back in 2014. Now it's 11 years later. You're a top 100 movie podcast, proud member of the Washington, D.C. Area Film Critic Association. And you guys do a little bit of everything. You review a wide variety of genre films from new releases to all of our fan favorites from the past. And you guys are the horror host and film programmer for the Terror Tuesday program at Alamo Draft House, DC area in Ashburn. So, man, you want to talk about a lot of feathers in the cap. Let's start at the beginning here. What gave you the desire and the push to want to actually start the show?
11 years ago, it came down to I was living in upstate New York at the time, and my good friend Nicholas Haskins, who sat directly across from me in the other cubicle, and I, in between calls, we were insurance agents, and in between calls, we would just talk about movies. We would get in heated debates. We would actually like basically be doing movie reviews right there in front of the rest of our coworkers. And one day, a guy kitty corner to us said, "You guys need to like just record this." This is in the beginnings of YouTube, obviously.
Sure.
And he was like, "You guys should do something with that. You're literally sitting here all day and you're entertaining me and I'm making fun of you. She's laughing at you. And it's just you guys bickering about movies. You should do it." So we just sat down and said, let's start on this movie. And I'm pretty positive that it was Amazing Spider-Man 2 was the first one we did. We bit off more than we could chew because we were like, we're going to go interview crowd members. We're going to make this huge. And like nothing worked, obviously. But I think that's something all content creators have to learn at some point in time. And shortly after that, we were doing the reviews, YouTube reviews per se. And then my wife got a job in Northern Virginia and I had to move. So what do we say? Well, we're going to turn it into a podcast. So let's just do it audio. And we started doing it that way for many, many years. And my main co-host Nicholas Haskins decided to, branch off. He wanted to do something different. He left everything to me. And what that meant for me was I can do whatever I want to
Right.
do. So I decided to kind of branch out and kind of stick to more of the genre stuff that I love so much and do like a horror niche thing that I mean, we'd already been doing stuff like that, but it was more of like a separate mini thing that we were doing.
Sure.
So, I mean, no, it's just the inspiration was I used to be a musician. I used to play in bands and be a promoter for most of my life. When that part of my life ended, I kind of didn't really know where to go with the creative part of my mind, and just came down to talking about movies. So I switched from being a heavy metal frontman to a film critic.
Right. Well, shit, you're still a front man though, and it works out. Like I said, you guys have been absolutely tearing it up. And you talk about doing the Alamo Draft House. Like, how did that get started for you guys?
That's really interesting, actually. When we moved down here, one of the biggest things that got me excited was knowing there was going to be an Alamo Draft House here. I'd never been to one. I'd heard the stories, I'm not lying when I say that the first night that we moved here, we had the mattress on the floor and a blanket and a pillow, and I said, "Let's go to Alamo, please. Let's go see whatever movie's playing." And we did. We went and saw Birdman with Michael Keaton, and then I think the following day, I went back again and saw Christmas Evil, which is one of my favorite Christmas slashers. And then I was hooked. And shortly after that, I met my good friend Brian Loy, aka Loy Sauce, who was managing another local theater, but it was not Alamo. We were there for Adam Wingard's Blair Witch redo, if you remember that.
Nice.
And the projectionist was a friend of his and had mentioned, "Hey, we're looking for somebody to do." I go, "Here, he's the guy." And I shit you not, I said that, and they gave him the job the next week. So getting him in the door was kind of getting me in the door, and we just
Sure.
started doing these one-off things where, for example, I'd say, "Let's book My Bloody Valentine and let's play the unrated cut and just show it at 9 o'clock at night, and then I'll host it and I'll come out and make it like an event type thing." And then we started doing that, and Alamo corporate took notice and they created the Terror Tuesday program. And now that's a program that is almost at every single Alamo Draft House in the United States. So
That's so
that's
rad, man.
pretty
And like
cool.
that, It's this one idea, and it took off because of how creative it is.
And it's just fun. I mean, to bring people in, everyone talks about the cinematic presentation and the communal experience when you see movies together as a crowd. And I feel bad for those that are on the other end of that don't really believe in it or haven't experienced it in the way that I have. And I'm telling you, some of the best movies and some of the worst movies that I've programmed, when you see them with a crowd and they're excited, there's nothing else like it. There really isn't. I mean, an excited crowd, for example, the Spawn movie from 1997. I took a chance. I screened it. People came out. They loved it. They had a blast. Not saying they thought it was a good movie, but they had a good time with it. So it's just, for me, I live for that moment, for that experience and that feeling from the other people. I just thrive off of it.
And that's exactly it. It doesn't have to be a great movie. It doesn't have to be a good movie, but the
Sure.
communal experience that you're doing with that, seeing the host and hearing him talk about stuff, and that makes that night so worth it. Because
Absolutely.
then, even if it's a bad movie, that becomes a joke to people. Like, yeah,
Oh
the
yeah.
night was amazing. The movie sucked, but what a great night.
But yeah, they walk out a smile on their face. They're laughing with their friends. They're talking about how bad this scene was, what made them
Right.
laugh the most. I mean, that's really what movies and slash cinema is all about. It's about the experience you have. You're having fun, you're being entertained. Yes, there is that other sector, and we talk about those movies too that are made to tell a story, and have good character development and great cinematography and amazing direction and a great score. But sometimes people just need a piece of trash to watch too. So I try to do like a fine, there's a fine line trying to balance having good movies and then also the movies I still think are good, but they're not really good.
But that are fun.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Well, if you guys haven't already, I have all of their links in the description. So we got the podcast, we got the YouTube link, the social media links. Make sure you're following them. Make sure you're subscribing on the podcast. Make sure you're leaving your comments or 5-star reviews. It helps push in the algorithm even more. They're a top 100. They deserve top five easily.
Oh,
So
thank you
make
so much,
sure
dude.
you guys are doing that. Commenting, leaving your 5-star reviews. Let's help these guys get even more to where they deserve to be. So, we talk about how much horror means to you and doing it, especially, like the Terror Tuesday program and things like that. But in order to do stuff like that, horror had to start for you somewhere, Justin. So now I would like to go back to the past and talk about what got you started in the horror genre, your first horror movie. And Justin, the first horror movie you watched was
Well, this is the weird thing, and I prefaced this in our discussions before we did this. I'm going to be kind of contentious about this and specify a little bit why. Now, I know that 9 people out of 10 will say, yes, Jaws is a horror movie. Okay. There's this new term that's been going around for a decade or so. People like to say horror adjacent. And I like to start bringing that up now. It starts to make more sense because as a kid, I'd watch Jaws, and yes, it was terrifying. Yes, it was absolutely the most frightening thing I'd ever experienced, and still to this day affects me. But I looked at the other stuff, the John Williams score that was so bright and colorful and almost like pirate music, as he describes it himself, and it was adventurous. And I like to use this quote, and I made a graphic with this quote like 8 years ago from Spielberg himself, and everyone like came at me for this, but verbatim he said it wasn't a horror movie, it wasn't a slasher picture, it was a seagoing adventure movie. And he said that in the Jaws: The Inside Story documentary, I think from the mid 2000s. But I've come around to the idea that I have to join the masses at some point, and it is arguably one of the most terrifying movies of all time. So I'd have to say the scariest movie I watched the first time would be Jaws for sure.
yeah. And it's one of those movies that, I mean, even if people have never seen it, they know the score. you know
Absolutely.
like you have every time you were young punk rock metalhead like me. Every time you'd go out and you'd break into somewhere and you go swimming, you'd always have that one dickhead around you doing the we all, it's like it's been a huge part of my life as well. Whether it was the horror aspect or just the score and how important that was. And I'm a huge fan of this movie, and I, unfortunately for you, I am one of the 9 of 10 that will say yes, this is a horror movie.
Oh, I get
But
it. I get it, man. I've had debates about it in the past, but I've kind of just like let that lie a
right.
little bit. And I think some of that had to do with a few years ago, I got the opportunity to watch the film on 35 millimeter, which was like a lifelong goal. And I saw it with Carl Gottlieb, the writer of Jaws, in person. He's very old and he didn't speak much, but I asked him his opinion on it. And he literally just brushed it off. He's like, of course it's horror. Ah. I was like, okay, if he says it, then I have to start at least somewhat accepting that viewpoint. But I know what Spielberg means by that quote, and I'm sure you do too after seeing
Sure.
the
Oh,
movie as many
absolutely.
times as you have. His intention wasn't necessarily to make a quote unquote horror movie the way they were considered in 1975, but more of like an adventure thriller picture. Because it is very thrilling. I mean, even just seeing the three guys, on the orca within the waves in the real ocean with the sunset, it's thrilling. It's a thrilling experience. And I've seen it probably on the big screen because we screen it. We used to screen it every year at Alamo. I'd go every year at 4th of July. We would watch it. So probably I've seen it at least 15 times in
Right.
theaters. So it's very near and dear to my heart.
Oh, totally understood. This is one of the first movies that made me go, fuck water. I'm not doing that. That's stupid. Um, so we know that, you saw this at a young age. Do you remember about how old you were when you had seen it?
I remember specifically how I saw it. It was definitely around 4th of July, and it was USA Network because they used to do the Jaws marathons. They do like one, usually it was like 1, 3, and 5, if I remember correctly. I don't remember ever watching two on USA. I could be wrong, but I'd always love that. I'd go to my grandfather's house, and he had this awesome basement with a pool table and ping pong table. And I'd go downstairs and like pig out on junk food, Doritos, Crystal Pepsi, and just watch whatever the Jaws movies were they had on. So
Dude, we
it
used to
was
take back, we
absolutely,
would save bottles and take them back just to get crystal clear Pepsi when we were kids, man.
dude. I'll tell you right now. I don't know if you tried it when they put it out again a few years ago. It just didn't taste the same to me.
It was not the same at all. Totally agree with you.
Yeah, but if I had to say, I definitely probably saw it before I turned 10. If I had
Yeah.
to, I know other dates pretty well with movies. If I saw them in the theater, but obviously I wasn't old enough to see Jaws in '75. I wasn't born yet, so it had to have been before I was 10 or around that age somewhere.
Yeah, and this movie, and it's a bummer they never showed Jaws 2, because I really do think that's an underrated
I
sequel.
love
Is
Jaws
it?
too, man. I
Yeah,
I
I've
screened it. I
always been one
screened
of
it a
those
few
people
years
that
ago.
like
Yeah.
such a huge fan of that movie, man.
I, the conversations after I screened that one, and I had to fight to screen it because every year they're just going to show the original. I said, "Well, show the original, then we'll promote that we're showing two because we've shown three before in 3D and it sells out because people just
Yeah,
want to have a blast. But two people are kind of weary about. I think two is a really solid sequel. I really agree with you. I
yeah.
enjoy it a lot.
It's a bummer that it doesn't get the flowers it deserves, but
Absolutely.
um, so we know you were, under the age of 10 watching at your grandparents' house. And it's funny because, we all had those grandparents that you went in the basement, and whether it was pool tables, ping pong tables, pinball machines, Nintendo,
Yeah.
systems, that's what you did, man. And the Jaws, though, however, is such an effective movie from front to back, even today, like you said. But do you remember which scene it was that affected you the most?
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of people look at the Kintner boy scene, and that definitely affected me. But there is this scene, and you see screenshots of this on social media now all the time where people are like, the most terrifying scene. It really is. And it's the man in the estuary scene where Michael Brody's in there and he's swimming with his buddies. They're playing around on the beach. And his dad tells him to go over there to be away from the beach area. And somehow, the shark just knows. He's like, fuck that, I'm going in there. And it's the shot of the guy in the estuary. I think he's a Boy Scout leader, I believe. Played by stuntman Ted Grossman. The character doesn't have a name, but he's in the boat, and you see that overhead shot of Bruce going underneath him. He's going sideways, which looks really eerie and weird and ethereal, but you just see him sliding underneath him. The water's just clear enough to see him there. That shot alone, nightmares the rest of my life. And I'm telling you, we could go into this more later, but I visited Amity, Martha's Vineyard, Amity Island, a few years ago. I did a locations video when I attended too. I tried to go on the water, dude. I couldn't do it in
Oh,
that
I
spot.
bet.
I couldn't do it. I stood right next to it, but even though it was mostly empty because people were on the beach on the other side, just like they were in the movie, I stood there and I knew it wasn't in there, but I still couldn't do it. So that
Yeah.
scene for right there, that scene made it so I didn't want to swim in swim class for gym. I still won't swim in the ocean to this day. Like I'll go into my waist, but I will not swim in the ocean because of that scene.
There's no reason to. I mean, you also at that point you get the leg fall, right?
You do, you do, and that was a scene that I think is perfect in tone, in context. If you know the behind the scenes, which I'm sure you do, Spielberg originally shot that scene to be much gorier. He was going to be in the shark's mouth, swimming along, being pushed with blood gushing out of his mouth. There is behind the scenes footage and photos of that, which looks horrifying, but I actually love the leg just dropping. It's actually kind of
Yeah,
like, I know that Joe Dante, I think he homages that or makes fun of it in Piranha a little bit with the legs, but I just love the way the leg looks real still to this day. It's just a prop leg.
exactly.
It drops, and then that's just all you need to see. You don't need to see anything else.
And I 100% agree with you because with that moment, I've always said there's nothing scarier than what happens in my mind. The way that I can imagine it, there's no way you could put it on screen any scarier. So, and this is the perfect movie. And we, like you said, we all know a lot of it is because of, problems with the shark and stuff like that. But a lot of this movie is you using your imagination. And I think
Yeah,
that's what helps to bring the impact of Jaws still to this day.
absolutely. I think had he been able to use the shark more, had it been working from the start of production, he would have shown the shark even in the Chrissy Watkins scene in the beginning, and that would have probably ruined it. The actual primal nature of that scene, why it's so terrifying, is you don't see it. It's what
You
you
have
don't
no
see.
idea.
Now you do see the Boy Scout leader get chomped on by Bruce before his leg goes. In that
Yeah.
scene, that's also frozen in my brain. People always like to say you don't see the shark until the end scene when they're on the orca. I'm like, no, you see it a bunch of times. You see it,
Right.
but you see its actual head come out of the water and it's chomping on the dude's arm for a split second. You see it, and that's a terrifying image too. So the guy's getting chomped on. He basically, in a sense, gives his life for those kids. But I
Yeah.
always liken how terrifying the moment is as a viewer to Michael Brody's face as you see the fin swim by him. He's literally like just pale white as a ghost. That's the audience reaction. That's why Spielberg still to this day, one of the best filmmakers of all time, in my opinion, because he just knows how to present the scene in a way to the audience where not only are you already terrified, but you see the terror from another character in the movie.
That dramatic zoom.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, one of the best shots ever in cinema history. It's genuinely one of my favorite ones ever. So we talk about the impact that this movie has and what scene influenced you the most. But what would you say your favorite scene from Jaws is?
It's changed the older I've gotten, but I always look forward to the Indianapolis speech that Robert Shaw delivers.
He was coming back from the island of Tinian to Lady, just delivered the bomb, the Hiroshima bomb.
In many different takes, in many different cuts put together, him sober, him hammered. Um, but I like the lead up to that because they're finally coming together as a group. And even though Brody is still very weary of the situation, he's so nervous, he's such an anxiety ridden man, but they're drinking and they're singing together and they're showing each other scars. And Quint is finally opening up a little bit.
Yeah.
We all know about the issues that Robert Shaw and Richard Dreyfuss had on set, and in they tried to have camaraderie, but they were constantly bickering, and he was pushing Richard Dreyfuss around, and the characters show that in the movie, that reflected in the performances and what you see on screen. But something about that scene is they're sitting there coming together. He tells that speech, and within seconds, you hear a big bang on the bottom of the boat, and the shark's out there, man. He's not giving up. He's coming for you.
And the way he tells that story, like just from his heart, like you feel like he was on the Indianapolis at that moment. And
I'm sure you do the same thing I do. When he tells that story, I'm looking at him, but I'm imagining all of the
100%,
images in my head every single time.
100%. And it explains so much depth to his character, why he is the way he is. And it's, again, just brilliant, brilliant writing of that scene.
And then we know that like 5 or 6 different people had their hand in that speech. So I think Brian De Palma had his hand in it. Robert Shaw, I think, at the end made his final touch on that thing. I think even Francis Ford Coppola touched it. Like, so everyone had their hand in that scene. Carl Gottlieb, just to make sure it was perfect. I mean, and he delivers it. It is arguably one of the most iconic moments in the movie as well. I like to use that word iconic a lot, but in this movie, there's so many iconic scenes to be had. But there's so many you could pick. There's just something so human about them sitting there drunk, singing together. They're out there together to try to kill this evil fish. It's just, and
See, that's what the movie should have been called, Evil
yeah,
Fish.
evil fish there. This man made Jaws.
But
Uh,
and you talk about like even like the quotes throughout the movie. You know, like you have
Smile, you son of a...
then you know
yeah, the
getting the shark
explosion.
blowing up, and one of the most iconic lines that have been ad libbed of all time.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
I
Yeah,
mean, to find out that that was ad libbed blew my fucking mind because it's just such a
absolutely.
perfect line.
It is perfect. That early Spielberg stuff, man. I tell you, when I go back to it, it's. I love movies now, and I support
Mhm.
movies now, and I still get thrilled by movies now, and I champion them. But sometimes when you watch movies back then, and it might just be, I don't liken it all to nostalgia because there is a nostalgic sense that goes into everything, but it's the way characters were written and the way the dialogue was presented and the way the actors were back then. Like when you look at this movie, all three of these guys have a very rugged, real look to them. You know what I mean? They have like no
Yes,
makeup on their face. They just look like rugged. You know, they've got, crow's feet, and they just look like they've been actually out in the sun because they have. They've been out in the
right.
sun in the sea for days, throwing up and trying to shoot this picture. And there's just something about it that just feels so genuine. And not that they, I guess some directors today still try to bring that genuine realistic nature to things and shoot out in the open and real locations and stuff, but they would never, if they made Jaws today, they would never shoot that on the ocean. It would never happen.
No, there'd be so many fingers from the studio in that, which kind of is funny enough. That kind of leads me into my next question because, remakes, reboots, requels, kind of all the rage right now. Is Jaws a movie you would like to see them take another stab at today?
um so I'm very outspoken about this subject, even to the point that recently someone that I respect, I won't mention their name. I love them. They're a great content creator and stuff, and they do great work. I champion and support reboots, remakes, requels, whatever you want to call them, because as I said earlier on, Ken, it's movies are made to tell a story, to entertain, or both. So you can do all of those things in a movie, and I like to look at Hollywood. It is show business, after all, show business, and they've been in the business of making money since the beginning. And we've seen how many Draculas, Frankenstein. I mean, we're getting another Frankenstein this year from Del Toro. I mean, it's kind of
Del
sucks
Toro,
to
yeah.
on Netflix and not in theaters, but I digress. But my point is yes, movies are made to present to an audience and also make money. Would I like to see a new Jaws movie? I think the history of shark movies since Jaws will answer that for me, but not that they're all bad. I've seen some great ones. There's been a handful that I've. Deep Blue Sea is great for its time. I think it's a solid movie. I don't think it's frightening, but I think it's
Right.
fun, and I think the animatronic sharks look great. Open Water, the Reef. There's a couple that I think are really solid and entertaining, but I don't think you can ever recapture the camaraderie and the chemistry of those three characters and those actors that made that movie. And you need a Spielberg to do it. And we have directors that are very well equipped that could probably put together a very good movie. I just can't see Jaws without an animatronic shark. I just can't.
Right.
I can't do it. Like, I love that you can see the jowls moving. I love that you could see that it's not a real shark, but that's why I like it, because it's this other thing. You know what I mean? If it looked so much like a real shark, then it would take me out of the movie. I like that it's this monstrous, almost megalodon looking. You know what I mean? The way that Joel's had to design the thing was for it to work in the water, and that's what gives it this otherworldly appearance. So to answer your question, much like Back to the Future, I just don't see. I mean, it's inevitable when Spielberg dies, and I hope that he outlives me. I'm telling you, um, or Robert Zemeckis with Back to the Future. They have deals with Universal until they're dead that they can't remake them.
Right.
So that's
It's just
part of their
I laugh
contract.
because anybody that watches this show is going to tell you and verify this.
Yeah,
I've always said the only two movies you can't touch are Jaws and Back to the
Back to
Future.
the Future.
I've said that since the beginning of this show. And again, if they do, will I be there opening night? Of course I will.
Obviously, yeah, obviously.
If it's bad, are they going to come in here and take my physical copies off my shelf? No.
Dude, I love that mentality. Exactly what you said. That's what I've been saying for years. And I still, sometimes I get so, I'm numb to it, not annoyed or angry, but numb to it when I have to respond to people when they still complain I'm like, dude, your copy of that movie's still on your shelf. It's still on
Exactly.
streaming. They're not removing it. They're not making it any different. They're not, they're not making the movie you love worse by making this
No,
one. They're going to make it, and it's either going to do well or not. And then, but the reality is, if it is a remake or a reboot or whatever you want to call it, depending on what it's going to be, it doesn't change that movie. You know what I mean?
never.
And also, they're never going 9 times out of 10. I'll say 9 times out of 10. They're not going to top it. I will say this: there have been requels that I've actually liked better than the original, and the originals are iconic, classic films that I still love. But that's very few and far between. That doesn't happen often. I just don't think the magic could be possible. You could remake Jaws with a CGI shark, put new actors in there. It will not be as effective. You could add more blood, more gore. I just don't see how you'd be able to recapture what happened in that movie, because it was made on the blood, sweat, and tears off them not being able to use the shark, off making the movie on the open water. It just doesn't seem to work for me.
I agree with you. And another thing I tell people, 'cause you and I think exactly alike on this. I use Halloween 2018 a lot in this argument when people
Sure.
talk about they don't need to do requels or remakes or sequels. I'm like, I want you to go back to 2018 and see how the sales of Halloween 1978 skyrocketed that year from
Dude,
people that went back to rewatch it or kids that had never heard of it that went and seen it. When you do these remakes and requels, not only are you doing this product, you're rejuvenating the product that we love.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, that
So,
that did big, and honestly, I like that movie a lot. That was a huge. I'm not
so
going
do
to
I.
talk about the sequels much, um, but it was a good requel in the sense that I thought that it captured the essence, or the core of what made the original and some of the other sequels good and iconic, and did something slightly fresh with it. That's what all those movies need to be. Like the new Scream movies, you can argue about those, or whatever it may be. The Force Awakens is kind of like that was the template. Like, this is how
Yeah,
you do it. It's basically the same movie but with new characters, and it's also a sequel. If you can do that and make it successfully, that's fine. But it's true, and I see it every year when people bring up, "Oh, I'm watching Halloween 2018. I never saw Halloween 3, or I've never seen Halloween 5. I'm going to go back and rewatch those, or watch those for the first time and rewatch 6." And people are buying them on 4K and buying the T-shirts from Fright Rags and Gutter Garbs and Cavity
yeah.
Colors. So it's actually pushing forward, you know, horror economy in a way. It's
It,
doing a good thing. So you can complain about all you want, and I just don't think anything should be off limits. If they again, if Jaws came announced, I wouldn't be shocked, but it won't happen until Spielberg's gone. I'll tell you that, though.
right, right. And I feel the same way about Zemeckis too, like you said, because Zemeckis I think is underrated. Everybody talks about Back to the Future, obviously, but Zemeckis has a lot of like. Even though I consider it a horror movie, a lot of people don't. I think What Lies Beneath is a great love letter to Psycho.
Oh,
You
dude, I
know,
love What Lies Beneath. Harrison Ford, Michelle Pfeiffer,
yes, dude. And
amazing
even
flick.
a lot of those shots, like where Harrison Ford's on the ground and you see Michelle Pfeiffer in the background, that's totally Psycho, man. And
Absolutely.
even the tagline, this does for baths what Psycho did for showers. And it's just like I'm
Yeah.
a huge fan of What Lies Beneath. I'm a huge fan of Bob Zemeckis, and I'm glad that you have that same appreciation for remakes and requels as I do, because, like you said, the horror economy goes forward with those. People go back and revisit the ones they missed because of these new ones.
And also, can we also get all kinds of cool new shit for the movies we already love? Like, hey, we're gonna do a collection for the new one and a bunch of cool shit for the old ones that you already love. And I'm like, cool, more toys, more new editions of the same movie that I already own 5 times, new shirts, whatever it may be. And also, it's a great opportunity for those that go to cons. It brings out some of the actors again from the
There you
other
go.
movies, and they get to make some money, and everyone gets to meet them again. Because some of them they're getting up there in age. I mean, when I met Dick Warlock from Halloween 2, I mean, this was only a couple years ago. I'd wanted to meet him for a while. I know COVID stopped things, and he's in Jaws as well. So that's why I figured I'd bring him up. He's in one of the scenes in the cage. He doubled for Joe
Mhm.
Dreyfus. He's in his 90s, dude, and it's like he's there, and you're like, I got to meet the Shape from Halloween 2. This is amazing, like,
Right.
while people are there meeting all the new actors. So it gives it in. Also, I have a daughter who's 21, and when she was younger, she liked to go to the cons with me a little bit, but it gave her an opportunity to be like, oh, that person from the new one, and oh, these are the people from the old ones, and then you present the old ones and the new ones. So it's getting all the younger generations also influenced by the genre in general too. So it helps
Yeah,
everyone. It's just I don't understand why people are angry. I'm like, dude, if you don't want to see it, don't see it. But nine
yeah,
times out of 10, they complain about it and they still go see it anyway. So
right. And again, any horror movie to me is a good horror movie, even if I don't like the movie or I don't enjoy it. If there's an audience for it, bring them on. Because it always
sure.
makes me mad. The thing, like, how you are with remakes and requels is how I am with people that talk shit about people that only watch horror movies on Halloween. I'm like, dude, invite them. Tell them, hey, we have some great Thanksgiving horror movies. We have great Christmas horror movies. Try to make them watch horror year round. Let's keep the shit going.
Dude,
Don't put them on an
I'll never.
island.
It's so funny that you mentioned that. I'll never forget this memory. Not to go off on a tangent or anything,
No,
but you
please.
mentioned the holiday thing. I was at a Christmas holiday party for my job once, and there was this young couple that were there, and they're like, "Yeah, you're the horror person at work, whatever, whatever." And I was like, "Have you watched any Christmas horror?" And they're like, "No." And I was like, "After the party, free drinks, free food, whatever." I was like, "When I come over to our place, it's just down the street. We'll Uber over there." And I showed them Silent Night, Deadly Night, and I swear to God, after that opening, they just looked at each other, and I was like, "You gonna be good?" And they're like, "I think so." They stayed till the end of the movie, but I think I terrorized the rest of their night.
Yes.
But
That's
it's true
awesome,
though, man.
man.
It's true though. It's like there's so much out there that people think just because you're in the horror community. It's like think about everybody else too, man. Like let's spread the love, let's spread the wealth, and also like let's make
Yes.
this thing bigger than what it is, man. Like horror is thriving right now. I mean, we're getting think of what Sinners is doing right now in cinemas. It's
Amazing.
amazing. It's amazing, and I'm like,
Amazing.
yes, more people go see genre. Let's push this. We're gonna get more of it, and for people like us that support it, it's only gonna get better.
And just like I had a guy at work that, because I'm the same guy, I'm the horror guy at work. He told me, like, hey, because he went and seen Sinners. He's like, I love this movie, man. I was like, dude, if you love that, go watch The Lost Boys. And he was like, what's that? And I was
Absolutely.
like, exactly. Go watch that movie. So I'm waiting to hear back from what he thinks about The Lost Boys. So like, if you love these movies, try this movie. How about we do that instead, guys? But man, talking about Jaws and that being your first horror movie, that's amazing to me, Justin. But here for a second, I do want to throw a little bit of a curveball at you.
Sure.
My little buddy Ghostface is here, and he has a question for you. What's your favorite scary movie, Justin? What is your favorite horror movie of all time?
I kind of slightly I kind of mentioned it earlier, but it is absolutely John Carpenter's Halloween.
Yeah,
That is the first, I will say, quote unquote horror movie that I experienced, and I'll never forget that moment because I was at my old drummer's house in my first band, and I went to his house on a sleepover, and it wasn't one of those moments where we went to the video store to rent it or anything. He just said, "Hey, have you ever seen Halloween?" I said, "No." And I loved the season of Halloween. I loved the holiday. And
yeah.
he had it taped off TV on an old tape. He just dusted that shit off, put it in, and I swear to God, the TV was, I have like a model in here, an old tube TV that's similar size. You could barely see the movie, but you're in the dark room, and I experienced it, and still to this day, it's I think the movie that resonated with me the most. There's a few movies that have done that. We've talked about two of them or three of them tonight. This one being one of the third one rather, that are in my top five most impactful to me movies. And usually when people say, "What's your top five?" I'm like, that's how I interpret it: is what top five movies affected me the most at a young age.
Sure.
And Halloween was absolutely that movie because I'm a slasher guy, like
Yeah.
forever, forever and ever. It's slasher, and even though Halloween is one of the most mild slasher movies, it's still post Bob Clark Black Christmas in terms of American horror really pushed that forward. Unintentionally or intentionally, John Carpenter, since you don't give a shit. But
Well,
yes, it's
I
it's
think what
Halloween.
it is because he's not a kid that drowned at the next movie he was 40 years old. It's not a guy that can get you in your nightmares. It's the next door neighbor that just fucking snapped.
Yeah.
To me, one of the scariest moments in Halloween 78 is when she pulls that mask off and you see Nick Castle and he comes back up and he just puts that mask back on. It's just that's it. Like he's ready to go again.
Yeah.
It, that's so he's just a guy. He's not a monster per se, even though he had the blackest eyes. He's just that guy that snapped and went crazy. He could be your next door neighbor right now.
I kind of miss that simplicity. We don't really get that anymore. It's fine, but sometimes I guess maybe in a way you can't really do it that way anymore. because it's been done perfectly already.
Right.
So, but that's what makes that movie so elemental and so terrifying, is that it is just, until two and Carpenter with that 6-pack of beer changed his mind on the whole thing. It was literally just, yeah, that's the dude. He got out of the asylum. He's just out stabbing babysitters. So that movie, absolutely. Jaws is in my top 5 for sure. And I know your listeners are probably gonna be like, man, this guy keeps mentioning Jaws as a horror movie, but it's not a horror movie. Oh, he's confused. I'm coming around, guys. All right, please cut me some
We're getting
slack
there,
on
man.
this.
We're getting there. Well, man, I've had an amazing time, Justin, talking about your first horror movie, your favorite horror movie, the podcast, and all the things in between. But before I let you go, we always bounce back to the same question. We're going to go back to Jaws, and what we're going to do is rank this movie on a skull count. Now, we're not ranking it on acting, production, score, direction. We're not being critics here. All we're doing is ranking Jaws on how much it affected you on your first viewing. So 0 skulls being not effective, 5 being extremely effective. You can use half and quarter skulls anywhere in the middle. Justin, what would your ranking of Jaws be?
It'd be 5 skulls, man. No doubt in my fucking mind. It's absolutely. If I could give it 100 skulls, I'd give it.
Right.
That's how influential it was. Is that there was a part of me when I mentioned earlier that I went to visit Martha's Vineyard. Not only was it to see the cool spots and be like, I'm a fan, I want to just see this. I almost was facing my fears in a weird way.
Sure.
And an interesting thing about that is that I went onto the beach. I have it in my video on YouTube, where these attacks took place in the movie. And I didn't go swimming there, but 2 days later, we're sitting there because we stayed like outside of Boston somewhere, and we made the trip. They spotted a great white 2 days later, right in the same
Shut the
beach.
fuck up.
I'm telling you, dude, it happened. I saw it on the news when I was sitting there. I go, hey, babe, look. And it was over on the side. It didn't bother anyone, but it was there.
It's still there.
Because they do go there during warm water, or during warm weather rather. So it was there. So I was like, yep, good thing I didn't go swimming.
Right. He was waiting.
Yeah. Yep.
But I know I said at the beginning, guys, but we're at the end of the third act. The credits are about to roll and the curtain's about to drop. But before that happens, all of the links for Epic Film Guys is right down in the description. So please do yourself a favor. Make sure you're following on social media. Like I said earlier, make sure you're subscribing to the YouTube channel and to the podcast. You are not going to regret it. Justin, please don't go anywhere, my friend. I got a couple more questions for you. Everyone else, if you haven't already, please like, comment, and subscribe. It does help build the channel more than you know. And follow SledgeHammer Horror on social media. Those links are in the description as well. But until next time, keep talking horror, stay what you are, and we'll see you guys soon.